It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
You do it then if you're so clever.
Harry Potter is the closest to real magic we're probably ever going to see. But while we were busy being captivated by what's on screen, the cast and crew were busy making it all come to life with some incredible behind-the-scenes tricks, like the creation of this giant life-size Aragog model that Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint really had to interact with on set. So, was the magic really all in the spells and potions? Or did Harry Potter just get really good at holding his breath without the gillyweed? Let's find out. The Room of Requirement is one of the most magical inventions to come out of Harry Potter. This mysterious room can turn into whatever the user wants it to, and there are some pretty old secrets hidden inside. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, the room is the scene of a major battle between Draco and his henchmen and our favorite trio of friends. But the actors surely weren't running through a flaming room to capture this scene. Or were they? It turns out that there was actually quite a bit of real firepower involved in this scene. While Crabby's fiend fire spell backfires and sets the whole room ablaze, the crew busy themselves with setting smaller fires on various surfaces with torches to introduce some real flames to the mayhem. The rest was added in later with CGI. To get the cast to convincingly climb up piles of teetering furniture, the crew had them wear harnesses and bolted down the mountain of furniture so that it would look wobbly but wouldn't fall. The result was this epic chase scene where Harry, Ron, and Hermione have to outsmart Draco and his goons once again. Filming left the cast appropriately sweaty and smelling just a little like smoke. The Harry Potter universe is full of enchanting games, like Quidditch, which is really played on university campuses, just without the whole flying aspect. But another popular game is wizarding chess, and you can buy boards resembling the iconic game that was introduced in the very first Harry Potter movie. The only downside is that these boards are missing the giant moving pieces, but we'll take what we can get. When it came to making the giant wizarding chess pieces move in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the crew had to get creative. The actors were only kids at the time, so safety was of the utmost importance. All of the pieces were actually sculpted and had motors built into them so that they could easily move around the board even when the actors were riding on them. But the most dangerous thing to get right was that explosion when Ron finally ends the game. The crew used a compressed air system built on the inside of the piece to get it to convincingly explode without any pyrotechnics. The result is one of the most magical games ever. A round of applause for Ron for sacrificing himself to save his friends. The Goblet of Fire has a lot of cool things going for it. There are new wizarding tools and a bunch of new creatures, like dragons and merpeople. But one of the best scenes, where we see how much of a hero Harry really is, occurs during the second task in the Triwizard Tournament. Harry and his fellow competitors must dive into the lake to save their friends, but the lake just so happens to be full of creepy-looking merpeople that will try their best to keep the wizards and witches underwater. Harry stocks up on some gillyweed to give himself some gills, but in real life, Daniel Radcliffe didn't have magic going for him, so instead of filming at a lake, the crew made a giant water tank and filmed in there instead. Daniel and the others had to get really good at holding their breath and swimming. Luckily, they weren't really being chased by merpeople. The creatures and the environment of the deep, dark lake were added later with CGI. Instead, the cast spent most of their time following the diving cameraman around the tank and taking the occasional hit of oxygen. It was the opposite of a relaxing swim, but we did get an epic underwater cast photo out of it, which Daniel Radcliffe later edited antlers onto and sent out as a Christmas card. Everything's magical in Harry Potter, from restaurants to sporting events to Hermione's favorite place in the world, the library. When books float up from Hermione's hands to return to their rightful place on the shelves in Half-Blood Prince, it's easy to think that CGI was involved. But those books really did float up to the shelf. They just had some green-clad hands helping them get there. Since the crew likes relying on practical effects when possible, they had extras dress up in green suits and take the books from Hermione's hands and put them back on the shelves. The green arms were later edited out in post-production. We have to give Emma Watson some props for not even looking at the helping hands. And we gotta say that the effect is pretty magical. If only we all had such friendly hands hidden around our houses to help out with the chores. Full disclosure, Aragog is terrifying. We can't blame Ron for being uneasy when faced by this gigantic spider in the Chamber of Secrets, especially once that spider and his babies decide that Harry and Ron would make a tasty midnight snack. You might find some comfort in thinking that Aragog is only a CGI spider brought to life by some talented VFX artists, but the truth is much more unsettling. To make Aragog believably spider-like and to properly terrify Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint, the crew actually built a life-size model of Aragog. The spider was a huge puppet that was mechanically manipulated using a motion control device and a team of puppeteers. They even placed a voice-activated system into the spider's mouth so that Aragog's voice actor could actually say his lines through the spider. Aragog's many offspring were added digitally, because no crew would want to spend their time making hundreds of spider puppets. Of course, Aragog shows up again in Half-Blood Prince, but sadly, or thankfully, it's the spider's final moments. The spider model was completely redesigned to make him look older for the scene. Then Aragog was finally laid to rest, but you can still find life-size models in museums and at the Wizarding World theme park. It's pretty jarring to see one of your favorite movie characters standing right beside themselves. While some of these doubles are pretty convincing, but most of the time you can tell that something's just a little off. There are tons of pictures out there of our favorite witches and wizards standing next to their stunt or body doubles. Some of the actors, like Emma Watson, even had multiple doubles, like in this photo from the set of The Deathly Hallows. But one of the most important doubles to the entire series was actually Hagrid's double. Actor Robbie Coltrane was only 6'1", which may not seem small, but is pretty tiny for a man who's supposed to be half giant. To try and make Hagrid look taller, Coltrane's stunt double was Martin Bayfield, a 6'10" athlete who would pull on a creepy, realistic face mask to look just like Coltrane. The mask may be unsettling, but the double's work definitely paid off, with Hagrid looking positively giant when he's next to pretty much any other character. We know you've asked yourself this one before: how do they make it look like the characters are actually flying brooms? Well, first, they needed to make hundreds of titanium brooms. Then, they needed a green screen, some thick safety mats, and an actor willing to hop on a floating piece of metal. The brooms were very uncomfortable to sit on, but at least the actors were safely strapped onto their hard metal seats to prevent anyone from falling off. The mechanism the brooms are attached to moves fluidly to make the actors look like they're gliding through the air. Then the backdrop would be added in post-production to make it look like the characters are flying through streets or conquering Quidditch. And speaking of Quidditch, to get the fast flying just right, the brooms will be strapped to machines that pulled the actors backwards and forwards while motion capture cameras followed them. And when two characters like Draco and Harry were going head-to-head to find the golden snitch, they would film their scenes on brooms right beside each other so that they could safely try to throw each other off their brooms. Care of magical creatures in some serious business. Just ask Draco, who got on the bad side of a hippogriff. That Hippogriff Buckbeak also happens to be one of the most elaborate creative designs done by the Harry Potter team. The designers didn't rely on only CGI to create this giant eagle-horse hybrid. Instead, they created a realistic model with individually glued goose and chicken feathers. The feathers were airbrushed to get that distinct hippogriff gray, and tweezers were used to make sure every single feather was in place. It took a team of 24 entire months to complete the project. Of course, Buckbeak wasn't meant to just look pretty, so the team also mechanically engineered his wings, eyes, neck, and beak to move. But Buckbeak, who's the size of a real horse, couldn't be as fluid as the creators needed him to be. In some scenes, CGI was used and the cast only had a piece of the hippogriff, like his beak on a stick, to interact with. If you ever want to see for yourself how much hard work was put into the project, the entire life-sized Buckbeak model is on display at the Warner Brothers Studio Tour in London. Fleur and Bill's magical wedding in Deathly Hallows Part 1 was a huge outdoor party complete with an enchanting white tent, but the actual filming of the wedding was much less enchanting and much more practical. Instead of being outside in the open air, the filming was done primarily in a studio, but at least the big tent was real. The Warner Brothers studio lot was covered in fake grass and filled with bright lights and cameramen as they tried to capture the epic party that would end in a rude bit of wedding crashing courtesy of a few troublesome Death Eaters. The filming was done inside to avoid any unprecedented weather, like strong wind that would ruin the tent or an unwelcome rainstorm. So while we'd love to be able to picture the entire cast having a huge outdoor party while they filmed the fictional party, we're sure they're happy that they got to stay warm and dry inside. And considering that filming would later take Harry, Ron, and Hermione to places like lakes and forests, the actors probably appreciated a break from the outdoors. We all have very fond memories of Dobby the house elf, who Harry Potter set free in the Chamber of Secrets, and it's easy to assume that the cast would have equally fond memories of the little creature. But filming with Dobby wasn't quite as endearing as watching the movies. Even Dobby's emotional final scene, where he sacrifices himself to help his friends escape, was much less emotional on set than it was in the theater. This photo from set shows the cast smiling while filming Dobby's final scene, as Emma Watson holds a simple white model of the character. Of course, the actors wouldn't be too attached to Dobby, since they never actually got to see the elf. The house elves were usually just sticks with tennis balls attached to them, or marks on the floor that showed where the creatures would be standing. They also had doubles with dwarfism standing in for the elves when the actors needed the scenes to be a little bit more interactive. The voiceover actor would also be on set to read the lines. But regardless of how inconsistent the appearance of the house elves were, all the actors who had a chance to be their doubles were happy to take on the magical role, even if it was just for a day. So it's pretty obvious that actors playing enemies on screen are a lot friendlier on set, but it's still pretty weird to see sworn enemies like Dumbledore and Lord Voldemort having a friendly conversation in full costume. These on-set photos show some of the most unconventional pairings of characters, like Snape laughing along with Ron and Harry in potions class, and even Harry accepting a kiss from the smiling witch. This group photo of Voldemort, Bellatrix, Dumbledore, and Harry makes us particularly uncomfortable, but the actors were all friendly off set. We're talking cast dinners and even holiday parties. The cast maintain that they'll always be a family. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone had enough unique magic going on to make it the perfect introduction to the world of witches and wizards. One of the best moments was when Harry, Ron, and Hermione get trapped in Devil's Snare. Ron struggles and makes it worse for himself, which also made the scene a lot harder to film. But the crew got creative with how to make these terrifying vines come to life by turning the Devil's Snare into a giant puppet. To start with, the vines were carefully wrapped around the three actors. Then, they were manipulated by puppeteers to get the movements right. They would be unraveled and pulled off behind the scenes, or bounced around like crazy when Ron was struggling. The footage was then reversed, so it looked like the vines were wrapping around the three kids instead of being pulled off. Like with the wizarding chess scene, the effects had to be safe for the actors, so using vines controlled by people was the most efficient way to make sure they didn't do anything unexpected, and honestly, reversing the footage was a pretty genius move that resulted in an incredibly unsettling scene of sinister, tangling vines. We all remember that scene in Chamber of Secrets where Ron tries to cast a spell on Draco, but his broken wand backfires, and instead, he's the one who starts throwing up disgusting slugs. He can't help but feel bad for Ron, and also proud that he tried to give Draco a taste of his own medicine for calling Hermione a mudblood. But now we finally know exactly how that scene felt for actor Rupert Grint as he spewed slugs all over the place, and it turns out it wasn't so bad. Those realistic-looking slimy slugs were actually gummy slugs covered in sticky sweet syrup. There were even multiple flavors of syrup for Rupert to enjoy. The texture was probably not the most appetizing, but it's a far cry better than Rupert having to put real slugs in, or near his mouth. Gummy slugs would even be a good idea for a new Harry Potter-themed treat at Honeyduke's. Let us know in the comments if you'd buy them. One of the most common magical effects in Harry Potter is that light that comes out of the end of wands when a spell is cast, but you might be surprised to know that most of those illuminated wand effects are not CGI. Sure, when the light is zooming across the room, some effects need to be added, but when the tip of a wand is lit up, like when a wizard casts a Lumos spell for example, the effect is actually accomplished by something pretty simple. A flashlight and a battery pack. Daniel Radcliffe himself talked about the struggles of using these wands. He said, "We could barely lift our arms after any scene in those first two films because we've got wand packs on under our robes and they were about as big as car batteries. And it's such a small effect." But we can totally see why the Harry Potter team went for a practical effect over some CGI. It looks awesome and takes less work. Plus, the actors can actually picture the light that would be emitted by spells. And who would have thought that the magic behind a wizard's wand was really just a flashlight this whole time? Harry Potter will live on forever on screen, but for the cast and crew, wrapping production on the Deathly Hallows was truly the end of an era. So for this last entry, let's dedicate some time to the team's emotional final goodbyes. In these emotional behind-the-scenes photos, we see the cast crying or holding back tears as they wrap up their scenes. In the movie, a lot of characters will get to see each other all the time after the Battle of Hogwarts, but for the actors, it was time to move on to new things. For us fans, it's really hard to have to watch Harry Potter come to an end, but there is a silver lining. Most of the cast members are willing to come back for future Harry Potter projects, which means we could see some of our favorite characters pop up in spin-offs like Fantastic Beasts. But for now, we have these photos and the memories we, and the cast, have made along the way.
Because I don't know what my day-to-day life consists of without you. All of you.
What's your favorite moment of behind-the-scenes magic? Do these behind-the-scenes secrets ruin the magic for you? Or do they just make Harry Potter even more amazing? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to ScreenRant for more great content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.